All or nothing thinking. When you tell yourself things like, if it's not the best, it's the worst. If I'm not a total success, I'm a total failure. If this relationship isn't perfect, then it's a total disaster. When we get caught in these extreme ways of thinking, and sometimes it happens without us even realizing that it happens, but if you notice yourself often feeling discouraged, defeated, not good enough, like nothing you ever do is right or good enough, then chances are you're getting stuck in all or nothing thinking. This is a big one with people that struggle with perfectionism, because perfectionism says if it's not perfect, then it's a total failure, right? We have this idea that here's the bar. And we think that if I don't reach the bar, if I'm, down here, it's failure if I'm way down here. But for perfectionists, it's here's the bar, here's the standard, and here, right under that, that's failure, right? And so we get stuck in this unachievable standard or these ideas of how things are supposed to be that they can rarely, if ever, be. And then we blame and shame and doubt and berate ourselves when they're not. So I want to talk today about all or nothing thinking, what to do about it, how to get out of this habit so that you can just feel better, show up better, do better, and live better. I think you're going to get a lot out of this one. I know for me, when I got myself out of this trap of all or nothing thinking, it changed a lot, and it just made my life better and easier and happier. I hope you get a lot out of it too. If you're new here, welcome to our incredible little corner on the internet. Take a second and introduce yourself in the comment section below if you are back again. It is always good to have you. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. The button's about right down there. Either way, my name is Kristina, and I'm a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, and the creator of my membership community, the Shift Society, where we are taking this work to a deeper level and you are being coached and supported the whole way through. You can get more information about that in the description below. I help heart-centered humans break through the crap that is holding them back so that they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And this all or nothing thinking really is preventing us from liking ourselves and our lives as much as we could. So all or nothing thinking, again, as I talked about, it's having these expectations that things need to be a certain way in order for us to be okay. And if it's not a certain way, then we can't be okay. So we get caught in this really kind of dichotomous thinking where I need to be like this, things need to go like this, other people need to be like this. And if it's not, then it's a total disaster and can really lead to a lot of feelings of anxiety and depression because we always feel discouraged or defeated. Maybe you even get stuck in this idea that unless it's going to be perfect, unless it's going to go exactly how I want it to go in every way, it's pointless. And because I don't know if it's going to be perfect or it's going to go the way I want it to, I may as well not even bother trying. So then it can keep us really stuck, which again can lead a lot to our feelings of depression. And it can lead to anxiety because then we feel kind of trapped and stuck and want to do stuff, but then keep talking ourselves out of it because of all this fear that comes along with this all or nothing thinking. So what happens in all or nothing thinking is we're only seeing kind of one side of things, right? We're only seeing that unless it goes exactly how I want it to go, then it's a complete failure. And so we're not actually seeing the nuances. We're not letting ourselves see the subtleties and see that, let's say you go into a job interview and you kind of mess up on a couple of the questions or you weren't able to express it as clearly as you wanted to. Your brain maybe wasn't firing on all cylinders at that exact moment. And then you leave the interview, regardless of anything else that happened in that interview, and you start really just obsessing and perseverating on that one thing that you messed up or that one question that you didn't answer as well as you could. And you're like, see, I'm a failure. I suck. I can't do anything right? Like this, it was a horrible interview because we had this one misstep. Instead of looking for the nuances and being able to say, okay, that wasn't my finest moment. I probably could have sharpened that question or the answer to that question up a bit, but I also did really good on that question. And I also, was really proud of myself for how I answered that one. Oh, and I wasn't expecting myself to have a good answer for that question, but I did, and it just kind of came out of my mouth. Oh, that was really great. Those moments were great. Or let's say even in a relationship, and this can happen with us often, especially if we struggle with really having really high expectations of others, is we're like, oh, that person, wasn't as thoughtful as I wanted them to be, or they didn't get me the gift that I really wanted. So it means that they don't care about me. They don't listen to me. They don't value me. Right? And so we kind of have this all or nothing thinking. If people aren't treating us exactly how we think that they should be treating us all the time and fulfilling our often unspoken expectations, that they don't really care about us, they don't really love us, right? The relationship is terrible or whatever that is, instead of taking a step back and saying, okay, like they didn't do this one thing exactly how I wanted them to do it, but there are other ways that they show me that they care about me. There are things that I'm overlooking that show me that they do value me. And if I take a step back and look at and notice that, then I'm going to be able to see that they actually do care about me. They do love me. And so really being able to see the nuances, if we take these examples, if we take these moments and make it mean that if there's this one thing that doesn't go the way that I want it to, or how I expected, or turn out the way that I was hoping, then it's all a loss. Then again, we get really stuck in feeling pretty terrible a lot of the time, pretty ripped off a lot of the time, disappointed, discouraged, defeated a lot of the time. So if we can take a step back and start to see some of the nuances instead of coming up with a reason, because here's the other thing that our brains do. Our brains like to be efficient and they like to be right. And so when you're getting caught in over all or nothing thinking, you might even not even notice that it's happening because you think it's so true. And you're like, okay, so I just screwed up that question in that interview. And because your brain likes to be efficient, instead of automatically taking a step back and being able to say, okay, there was these other things in the interview that didn't go so badly, what your brain's going to do is it's going to say, I screwed that question up, I'm a failure. And then all of a sudden your brain's going to start coming up with all kinds of examples from the past 10 days, 10 months, 10 years of things that you have screwed up, right? Things that you have messed up, missteps that you've had, even just momentary. And it's going to start collecting all of those experiences and all of those examples to prove your point that you are in fact a failure. Thanks, brain, for that. But it's that cognitive bias where if we're thinking something or feeling something, our brain is going to try to support that premise and take the shortcut by coming up with these examples to confirm our current thought, which can make it kind of hard to not believe those thoughts. But as we've talked about here before, our thoughts are not necessarily truths. And just because you're thinking it, it doesn't mean that it's accurate, fair, correct, responsible. It's just a thought. And then we get to decide what we're going to do with those thoughts. So when we get caught in that over all or nothing thinking, when we are collecting all of that evidence to support that premise that I'm a loser, I'm a failure, I'm a reject, I'm unlovable, I can't do anything right, I'm not competent, I'm not capable, whatever that is, it can be hard to see through that. It can be hard to go to the next step because we get so caught up in it with all those thoughts and all that evidence to support those thoughts. So we need to do something about it because that just sitting and feeling terrible is not helpful. It's just not. It's not producing anything effective, productive, or useful. It's just making us feel terrible. It's keeping us stuck in feeling terrible. And then oftentimes when we're feeling terrible, then we go through life just sort of projecting those feelings onto other people. It influences how we're showing up because we don't feel good about ourselves. We're not willing to be more creative, to contribute, to have more just sort of interesting experiences in life, to show up better in our relationships and for ourselves and everything. And so it can be really hard to get out of that, but I'm going to teach you how to start doing it. And again, this is the deeper work that we do in the Shift Society. So if you want support on this, get on the wait list in the description below. But I'm also going to give you some really helpful tips to get yourself out of that all or nothing thinking. And the first one is to really start to notice when it's happening. Start to notice your brain when you, and how you'll know that you're going to be going into all or nothing thinking is when you say things and you start to notice yourself saying things like always or never or everything or nothing or worst or no one. Right? When we start using these really sort of extreme words, these very polarizing one-sided words, this always happens, It's never going to work out. They always do this, right? Everything is always terrible, right? Nothing ever goes the way that I want it to. When we start using these very sort of extreme terms, then you know that you're going into all or nothing thinking, because it's just not true. Life is so much more full of subtlety and nuance than our thoughts would often like us to believe. So start to just catch it. Notice when it's happening. And then the next step is to point it out to yourself. And just to be able to call out and be like, oh, brain, there you go. I'm in that all or nothing thinking. And being able to label it is really helpful, because it's almost like you're taking a step back and looking at your brain, right? You're observing your brain and what it's doing. Instead of getting so caught up in it, you're observing it and being able to say, oh, look at my brain and what it's doing right now. It's taking this one incident and it's coming up with this very kind of polarized way of seeing it. It's coming up with these really extreme one-sided thoughts. Oh, hey brain, the gig is up. I see what you're doing. You are all or nothing thinking right now. Then the next step is to ask yourself if it's helpful. Regardless of whether or not you are going to believe those thoughts in the moment, regardless of how much evidence your brain is coming up to support that current premise, just ask yourself, is it helpful to think this way? Even if there is some truth to it, is it helpful? Is sitting here and feeling terrible about myself, is it helpful? Is it helping me come up with a solution? Is it helping me come up with a way through this? Is it helping me feel better? Is it helping me work this out? And if the answer is no, then try something else. So is this thought helpful? Regardless of how much I'm believing it in this moment, is it helping me? And if the answer is no, then it might be time to start turning it around. The next thing to do is to just ask yourself, regardless of whether this thought is helpful or not, get a little bit deeper and ask yourself, how does this thought make you feel? Right? How does this thought make me feel? When I tell myself, because this didn't go the way that I wanted it to, that I am a loser, that I'm a reject, that I'm pathetic, how does that make you feel? And just taking a step back and tuning into how you're feeling. Chances are you're feeling kind of vulnerable. You're feeling kind of scared. You might be feeling hurt. You might be feeling discouraged. And so when you can start to really pay attention to how you're feeling in that moment, to kind of weed the feeling from the thought, it's going to give you a lot more clarity as to what's really going on. So then when you can pay attention to that feeling, then you can see what's happening under the surface. Oh, I'm actually just feeling really hurt right now. Maybe it's not true that everyone is against me or that I can't do anything right. Maybe it's just that I'm feeling kind of vulnerable and kind of scared, right? Maybe that's what's happening right now. And so I'm going to tune into those feelings and I'm going to get curious about those feelings. I'm going to process some of those emotions, and just even taking a step back in that way to process what you're feeling is going to help you get a lot more clarity, and it's going to get you not quite so caught up in those thoughts, and it's going to help you be able to see a way through in a little bit easier way. And then as you move through and get more clarity on your thoughts and start to really just see if those thoughts are helpful and really just start to pay attention to this all or nothing thinking that's going on, it's time to then take more responsibility for your thoughts. Being able to look at the situation from all sides, being able to look at, as I talked about before, those exceptions to this all or nothing thinking that your brain is trying to convince you of. When are times that this didn't happen? Where are the times where I was successful? What are the things that did go well? How has that person shown me that they do care about me? Right? And coming up with examples to contradict this very extreme thinking. Now, this isn't about positive thinking. This isn't about being like, wow, that was that really didn't go the way that I wanted to, but la la la, it's all good, no problem. Right? That's not it. That's that's kind of putting your head in the sand and being oblivious. It's not going to necessarily be the best strategy, though maybe sometimes it might. But it's not always going to be. So being able to take a step back and thinking more responsibly about it and be able to say, that wasn't my finest moment. What do I want to do differently? Or, there have been some issues in this relationship. So instead of me just telling myself that it's because, I'm unlovable, maybe there's a conversation that I need to have with this person. We need to sort some things out, get more clarity, right? Have a better understanding of each other. So if I can be more responsible with this, looking at what did go well, what did I do well, where are my strengths, what are some things that I want to take from this, what are the things that I want to learn from this, what are some things that I want to do about this, that is responsible thinking. Then I am able to move forward in a helpful, productive, useful way instead of just sitting around and feeling terrible. In all of this, I want to also invite you to be gentle with yourself, to have compassion and understanding for yourself. Having a human brain is hard. All of our human brains do this all or nothing thinking. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I do this all the time, what's wrong with me? And then you start beating yourself up, you're like, even there, that's all or nothing thinking. I do this all the time, right? That's all or nothing thinking. You don't do this all the time, but you probably do it sometimes, right? And it's probably not helpful a lot of the time. And so just noticing it and being like, yeah, this is what human brains do. There's nothing wrong with me because my brain does this. It's just part of being human. So I'm going to be gentle with myself. I'm not going to beat myself up for it because, again, that's not helpful. It just makes me feel terrible. Just being able to say, okay, this is going on. I want to start working on this. I want to start being more aware of it. I want to start just moving through this. And I'm going to be gentle and kind with myself the whole way through. Because criticizing, judging, blaming, and berating myself for having a human brain that does the things that human brains do, it's just not going to be helpful. Not getting so caught up in our thoughts. Like I talked about a few minutes ago, learning how to just observe our thoughts, to notice what's happening without getting so caught up in it. That is a skill that is learned. And I have a free 10-minute guided mindfulness exercise that's going to help teach you how to do that. I have people that have gotten this exercise and they've listened to like every day. I've had people email me and say, I listen to that mindfulness exercise every single day. And it really helps me stay focused and stay centered and to not get so caught up in the things that my brain tries to trick me about, that my brain tries to get me pulled into. So you can grab that free 10-minute guided mindfulness exercise. It's a great first step for learning how to not believe everything you think and just observe it, catch it, so that you can turn it around. Get on the wait list for the Shift Society. Information is right down there. Come and do this work on a deeper level. Be supported, be accountable, be coached. Always good to have you here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like the video if you got something out of it. That would be super helpful. Helps get this in front of more people. And until next time, take good care.